Reinhard. Interestingly enough, there are still things about Scientology that are not so clear or I am completely in the dark about. For example, Sunday services. What do they do when they pretend to be a church on Sunday? When the Sunday services program came out, there was a whole program and list of things that were done, and the Sunday services are a very formal process. Now, I don't remember off the top of my head everything that gets done, but it is it's not a free-for-all, and it's not something that individual Scientology ministers come up with on their own. They're actually provided with, with a whole format and scripts and whatnot for this. There was a big book, this huge book, that very thick, that came out with the Sunday Services program, which was the book of services and Scientology rituals and this sort of thing. I forgot what it was called, but it was like the book of ceremonies and services and things like that, right? It was something like that. Scientology services and ceremonies and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, this great big book has a number of articles in it from L. Ron Hubbard that are to be used for the sermon that they give on Sundays. And then it has this format that they follow, and it starts with an opening, right? And they say welcome to Sunday service and that sort of thing, and they do. Then they go into the L. Ron Hubbard article, right? And they basically read from it. And they just read the whole thing. And it could be an article about getting along with others. It could be about the ARC triangle, which is the affinity, reality, and communication triangle in Scientology, which is supposed to lead to understanding. Those three components work together to create understanding. Or it could be about communication, the importance of communication, some basic Scientology principles. And there were tons of these things that were excerpted from Hubbard's works and made into these ready-made sermons, right? That were Scientology style. And so once that's read, then these specific sermons were paired up with what was called group processing. And group processing is a Scientology action where you take a group of people from 3 to 300, and you put them in a room, and the minister, the person who's administering the group processing, gives orders and commands to the group to execute. And these are supposed to result in some kind of a spiritual awareness or awakening in the people who are being group processed. And the guy who is doing it is supposed to be trained in watching the indicators and responses of the group as a whole and taking them up to this higher state through group processing. And there would be assistants if there were a lot of people. I think for every 20 people or something like that, there's supposed to be one assistant. So if somebody is sitting there doing the commands of the group processing and gets a headache or doesn't feel good or something like that, then that person gets sort of pulled out and taken aside so they don't distract the rest of the group with their torment, right? And when this started, and when these Sunday services started, we were doing them in the Sea Org, as well as all the churches, of course, were doing them, and we were encouraged to go. In fact, we had to go. So I hated group processing. I hated it. Never got really much of anything out of it. I just hated it. And the group processing commands are things like they're long. There's these scripts, and they go on and on and on for pages and pages of look at the ceiling, look at the floor, look at that wall, touch your head, touch your stomach, right? Look at the floor again, right? Look at somebody next to you, say hi. Just these sort of objective kind of commands, right? Sometimes they would go a little subjective too, like, okay, so look at the wall behind me. Like, let's say I'm delivering the process. I'd say, okay, look at the wall behind me. Good. Now imagine it getting smaller, right? Okay, good. Now look at the ceiling. Okay, good. Now imagine it getting smaller. Look at the 8 corners of the ceiling. Now be the 8 corners of the ceiling. And these are not verbatim. I'm just throwing these out off the top of my head. I didn't look this stuff up before I answered this question, so this is all just what I'm remembering. But the goal of these processes was that it was somehow supposed to be connected to the subject of the sermon and was supposed to make you feel better. Okay, and that was a big part of the Sunday services was the sermon and then the group processing. And then after the group processing, when everybody's supposed to be feeling so great, then they would do the prayer for total freedom. And I don't know where the hell they dug this thing up. I mean, I don't think Hubbard ever had anything to do with writing this. But it was this prayer, to the Creator, to pray for peace and goodness and this sort of thing in the world. And it was this sort of very weird thing. Like a lot of Scientologists I knew, and myself included, just thought, okay, sure, that's really spiritual, I guess, because we never experienced or had anything in Scientology where you're talking to God or you're talking to a creator or praying to anyone. It's a total farce, because Scientology is not about praying. It's not about asking some higher power for a pass or for goodness or for favors or something like that. That has nothing to do with Scientology philosophy. So it really kind of got us all going, what prayer for, what? Well, okay, because again, you don't question too much. And anyway, so they end off with a prayer for total freedom, and then there's usually, coffee and cakes or something. So for the public, not for us Sea Org members. We never got any coffee and cakes. So that's kind of the Sunday service. And we didn't really think about it much. We weren't briefed in on we were doing this because, tax exemption, or we were doing this because the government was looking into us or something like that. That was never part of our thought process when we were, good little Sea Org members or Scientologists doing this stuff. It was just something we were supposed to be doing. So we started doing it. And it was very unpopular. And the reason I say that and can say that is because over time, within about a year or so, people stopped going. They didn't want to go. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. They thought it was a waste of time. And the Sunday service program just sort of went nowhere and just sort of, kind of basically crashed and burned. And they might still promote doing Sunday services, but I think if you go to most churches of Scientology that do them, you'll find, maybe a few staff, maybe a couple public at most, if they're even doing them at all, because they're not popular amongst Scientologists. So that's the Sunday services.